Warning, this video may contain spoilers for late parts in the game. If you plan on playing this at some point, turn back now. You have been warned. Welcome everyone to what was originally my favorite game. This playthrough didn't actually demote it, in fact this run bolstered everything about what I liked in the game since my first run through, but some other games have greatly impressed me since I first made my top 10 video. I'll probably never stop liking this game completely, even when I'm old, as this is around my 5th or 6th playthrough, though this was actually my first time playing the actual cartridge, so I will say I'm a little biased going into the review. I do have some minor cons that other people have talked about before that I'll be talking about later, but for the most part I heavily enjoyed playing through this game again for the first time since it came out on the Wii U. For those who have never played this game before, let's get into the basics. This game plays like most RPGs of the time, as pressing the A button will bring up the menu, being how you'll most likely be interacting with everything, as this menu is how you can activate a talk, a check of the area, how you see your stats, equipping items, and checking your inventory. One thing I literally only learned in this playthrough was that this game actually uses the L button. This button actually takes away the need to open the menu to talk to people or check the area, as just pressing L will do either, making things be faster by like 1 second. You also don't have the menu appear when dialogue starts, but I was still so used to opening the menu from my other playthroughs I would instinctively do that still. For the most part, Earthbound doesn't deviate too far away from the formula of RPGs, though this game does have a unique rolling health meter. Normally, once you take damage, it immediately gets taken away from you, while Earthbound has the gauge roll down, meaning that you can potentially save your teammate's life if you're able to heal them before they die from a mortal hit, even being able to make attacks in the time before they die. Actually, you don't even get a game over in this game when you die, unless you choose not to continue. You'll get placed back at the last place you saved at, but still have all the experience you previously had, though all teammates besides Ness will need to be revived at a hospital. One thing to note on battle is the fact that this game doesn't have random battles. Instead, you can actually see the enemies on their overworld, and if you approach them from behind, you can get a first strike on them, which lets you get a whole free turn to attack. If you're a good couple levels ahead of enemies, you can perform an insta-kill like this, though sometimes you can even perform an insta-kill without getting behind them. Most of the time, if you're too high a level, the enemies will just run away in fear. One final note on battles is that you will earn no money in them, but you will receive money from your father, basically making every fight give you money, but in a sort of different way. Eventually you will get a teammate named Jeff. He is able to fix items occasionally when you choose to sleep in a hotel or the various free areas to heal, with either a 100% chance to fix something or a 25% chance each sleep cycle. Most of the items that can be fixed are equipment pieces for Jeff or items he can specifically make the best use of. There aren't really any big side quests in the game, but some extra things you can do will give you some extra dialogue later on. This game, from start to finish, is incredibly weird, and I won't be explaining every minute detail of the game, so if you do want the full scope, especially the humor of the dialogue, I'd suggest you just actually play the game. The game starts with a meteor crashing down right next to the main character, Ness's house in Onett. Ness goes to investigate but gets turned away by the cops. Later in the night, your neighbor Pokey, but I'm gonna call him his Japanese name, Porky, wakes you up again due to him leaving his brother behind when they went to look at the meteor when the cops had left. Ness takes his dog, King, with him, and he notices that the wild animals are now super aggressive, attacking the trio as they make their way to the meteor. After reaching it, they find Picky, but are stopped as the meteor glows and an insect emerges named Buzz, who says that he's from 10 years in the future and that a universal cosmic destroyer named Gygus had taken over Earth, Buzz being what the humans of the future had become. Ness brings Porky and Picky back home, where they get beaten by their father, and their mother ends up swatting Buzz and killing him, but not before giving Ness the Sound Stone so he could collect the melodies of the 8 sanctuaries that would give him the power to defeat Gygus. He finds the first sanctuary in the mountains of Onett and continues on his journey, learning of a girl named Paula due to her voice in his dreams, telling him to head to the next town over, Tucson. He goes to Tucson but finds out that she's not there, having been kidnapped by the happiest in the peaceful Rest Valley. saving her and the town by defeating Carpenter, who was being influenced by a strange statue he found. They continue on their quest by helping out a band called the Runaway Five, who take them on their tour bus to the next town, Threed. They soon learn that Threed has been taken over by zombies and end up getting captured. Paula sending a telepathic message to their supposed next friend, Jeff, in Winters, where she asks him to help them however he can. Jeff awakes and immediately decides to go on this quest, eventually locating his father, Dr. Andonauts, who lets Jeff take his Skyrunner. Jeff flying it all the way to Threed, where it crashes into the grave that Ness and Paula are being held under, and freeing them. The three are able to trap the zombies in a tent with the help of Apple Kid, who gives them zombie flypaper before they head off to Saturn Valley, where they find many Mr. Saturns who say that their friends have been forced to work in a factory behind the waterfall, where, yes, the password to get inside is literally waiting 3 real-life minutes. Once inside, the gang locates a living pile of vomit named Belch and defeats him, freeing the local Mr. Saturn and saving Threed from Belch's disgusting factory that was polluting the air and water. After drinking some psychedelic coffee and getting a much-needed reprieve, the group heads to Forside through the dusty dunes due to backed-up traffic, giving a construction worker some food along the way. They find Porky living a life of luxury as the mayor, Montoli's personal advisor. Later, they are again forced to help the Runaway Five by giving a diamond to their new manager, obtained from the construction worker earlier after defeating 5 moles in his cave. They head to the local mall where Paula gets kidnapped, eventually finding a man who they met earlier, Everdread, who had seemingly gotten mortally wounded, sending Ness and Jeff into a cafe where they get transported to Moonside, defeating the Manny Manny statue for the final time. After this, the duo is forced to go to a monkey cave to retrieve the key item that will help them reach their next destination, a Trout yogurt dispenser, getting the team a way into Montoli's office where they find he no longer poses a threat, even giving Paula back who had not been harmed, and his helicopter, though the gang soon find Porky flying away in it. After returning to Threed, the gang locates the sanctuary in Peaceful Rest Valley as well as in Saturn Valley. You can do these sanctuaries when you first locate them, but I like coming back a bit overpowered. They again head to Threed where Jeff fixes the Skyrunner, and they fly to Winters, finding another sanctuary. They return to Dr. Andonauts and find that he put the next coordinates into the Skyrunner, and the gang head to Summers, arriving and going on a weird chase to find a girl selling a magic cake, Ness immediately tripping and falling unconscious. The story now focuses on Pooh, a prince in Dalam, who goes through some wild training that involves not listening to the actual game and then getting pieces of his body torn off bit by bit. After finishing his training, he is told to go to Summers and find Ness, using teleportation to do so and immediately joining the team. They get on a ship headed to Scaraba, killing a kraken on the way, and find their way blocked by a pyramid. They head back to Forside where they locate another sanctuary before going back to Summers, Pooh trading a family ruby to look at a secret museum exhibit that explains how to get into the pyramid, where they find the Hawkeye, meeting another person who Jeff had met earlier named Mr. Dungeon, who had Dr. Andonauts literally turn him into a walking dungeon. He gives the team a submarine that was inside of him, and they make their way to deep darkness, using the Hawkeye to see in the darkness and reach Tenda Village, all the while finding the trail that Porky left behind after he crashed his helicopter. You help the Tenda Villagers overcome their shyness, find a sanctuary, and fall into the Lost Underworld. Going a little before this, the gang finds a carrot key, teleporting back to Dalam, where they locate another sanctuary before they fall into the Lost Underworld, which I think is a reference to the Hollow Earth theory or something, navigating through and finding the final sanctuary, causing Ness to fall unconscious and enter his own mind called Magicant, finding lost memories of childhood and things Ness thought had been completely lost with time. He heads further in, finding the Sea of Eden, where he is forced to fight the evil in his heart, a living nightmare. Upon defeat, Ness overcomes the darkness and frees his mind, allowing him to absorb Magicant into his mind, along with the Soundstone, becoming much stronger. Ness awakes with a stronger resolve than ever before, as the gang now know their next destination, Saturn Valley. After arriving, they find Dr. Ondonauts already there with Applekid having built the phase distorter, learning that Porky had already stolen their first attempt at it, and the gang teleports to a strange location, finding a Mr. Saturn that Porky had left behind. Dr. Ondonauts begrudgingly explains that time travel would most likely destroy their bodies. He says that he can move their consciousness to a body more fit for this travel, but he doesn't think it will be reversible. The group resolves to see this through to the very end, and their souls are transplanted into robotic bodies and travel to the past, coming in contact with Porky in front of a strange looking piece of tech that Porky reveals is the Devil's Machine, or at least what is left of Gygus. They fight Porky and the Devil Machine before Porky shuts it off, unleashing the full power of Gygus on the universe, with the only option for them to even fight this monstrosity being to pray. After a while, Porky actually abandons the fight and time travels to the future. As Paula prays every turn, more and more people begin to pray for the safety of those who are fighting to save all of humanity. Eventually though, Paula runs out of people to ask to pray. That is, before you, the players, start praying for the safety of these kids, doing insane damage due to this well of human emotion that has been the downfall of Gygus before, completely erasing Gygus from existence. With their robot bodies pretty much destroyed in the fight, it looks pretty grim for the heroes, but their souls return to their real bodies, traveling through time where they are able to find themselves. One by one, the group begins to head their separate ways as their quest is finished. After Ness returns Paula home, he heads to his as well. Not long after, Ness is awoken by an annoying knock on the door, answering it and finding Picky with a letter from his brother Porky telling Ness to come and get him. There's so much to like about Earthbound. The humor throughout the game is some of the best in all of gaming to me, and like I said, the only way to really get the humor is by just playing the game. The music is insanely good, especially the boss tracks. Everything leading up to the end of the game had a special kind of uniqueness at the time that it came out. Mostly it's just randomness, but it makes the game that much more special, just wanting to discover all the wacky things that can be done, because even though I've played this game so many times now, I'm still making new discoveries of dialogue or even buttons that I didn't know how to use. I also like the gameplay feel due to never really feeling overpowered. I beat the game with everyone over level 80, and I still felt the endgame stuff was on par with me, and usually endgame enemies are a walk in the park around level 60 or 70, but even for high levels for Earthbound, you still need to assess certain situations a bit, or you'll just get destroyed. This is good to me because it actually makes the enemies feel like a threat throughout the entirety of the game, which they're literally supposed to be a threat to the planet, with Gygus being all-encompassing evil. I don't have any cons that differ too much from others, though I also don't mind them as much either. Withdrawing money is kind of annoying, as well as saving the game, but it's really only adding a couple extra steps at most, with the saving bit being a staple of most games at the time. I don't like item management in this game either, as a lot of important items just take up space in your inventory, only using some once, and you can't throw them away either to my knowledge. Needing to call Escargot Express and later teleporting to your sister to store these items is just a hassle as well. Yes, I'm going to have a whole section dedicated to the sad-ass alien dude's life, and I'll probably be spoiling stuff from Mother 1, so be warned. The Gygus from this game is Gaigwei from the first game, which I'll explain his past in that game now. Basically, aliens were abducting people from Earth, with two of those people being Maria and George, who were forced to raise an alien baby. This baby was Gygus. George eventually learned of the alien's power called PSI and was able to escape back to Earth. Later, Gygus was tasked by his race to make sure that PSI won't get used against them, hesitating at the fact he didn't want to betray the ones who raised him. 80 years later, he attacks Earth, influencing many things around the world, such as animals and inanimate objects, turning vicious. He is eventually stopped by Ninten by playing a song that Maria had sung to him as a lullaby when he was a baby, confusing him and causing him to retreat. Many years after that, Gygus had conquered Earth, but found the Apple of Enlightenment, it foretelling his defeat at the hands of a boy named Ness, causing him to travel back in time to plot out how to stop Ness. Eventually though, his mind fills with grief and guilt, exerting so much evil power that his body gets destroyed and he basically goes insane. He becomes undefinable, like an angel's true form in the Bibles being indescribable by humans, but basically becomes pure evil in its truest form, eventually becoming known as the embodiment of evil. Through this, he isn't really conscious of what he's doing, probably throughout the entirety of Earthbound, as his mind is completely broken and unable to control the vast amount of power he has gained, becoming a literal threat to all of existence. This is when Buzz travels to Ness's present day and reveals the destruction that Gygas had caused before Gygas went to the past. At some point, either the aliens or Porky made the Devil's Machine to at least contain the remnants of their leader, possibly before he had completely lost his mind. He had it made as a precautionary measure. Out of pure spite, and having been next to literal evil for who knows how long, Porky unleashes Gygas on the entire universe by shutting off the machine, only being defeated once again by a well of pure human emotion. To say his life was anything short of tragic is an absolute understatement. His race was sort of evil to begin with, but he was made partially human by being raised by them, technically being the only reason he was able to get defeated the first time, only to then fester his hatred and grief for years until his body and mind succumbed to the pure power he was gifted with. Whew. This was one of the games that I was really looking forward to finally assessing my full opinions on, and I'm also just super happy that I finally got to play Earthbound all the way through again. And did I already mention it was on the actual cartridge this time? Man, these reviews make me super happy to do, because I've always wanted to actually reflect on the stuff I consume. I mean, I usually do, but I have a terrible memory, so being able to put these thoughts out somewhere for me to look back on every so often, and get to put my own creative spin on is awesome. Hope you enjoyed this video, and hope you'll stick around for our next videos to come.